I'm Maddie's mom, by the way.
Oh, hi.
She loves you.
She's amazing. She's an excellent addition to my campaign.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Facebook Live for this Wednesday. I am Lisa Morgan, President of the Georgia Association of Educators.
Sharon Doe, Vice President of the Georgia Association of Educators.
And I'm Carly Shaw, the Secretary Treasurer of the Georgia Association of Educators.
And we have a very special guest with us this week. Jasmine, will you introduce us and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, my name is Dr. Jasmine Clark, and I am a microbiologist and lecturer at Emory University. I teach microbiology, anatomy and physiology, and advanced pathophysiology to undergraduate and graduate student nurses. In addition to that, I am also the state representative for Georgia's House District 108, which covers the city of Lilburn and the surrounding unincorporated areas of Norcross, Tucker, Lawrenceville, and Stone Mountain, all 100% in Gwinnett County. And thank you all so much for having me here this evening to, just to talk.
Thank you for being here. One of the things that has been on all of our members' minds and actually all of our community over the past month and a half is returning to in-person school. So do you have a position on that? And what do you think we should be doing with the return to school?
So I do have a position on it, and my position is probably not going to be 100% popular with a lot of people, but based on what I know about community spread, about the epidemiology of this particular virus, and what we've seen with the numbers in our communities, in our county, I do not think that it is necessarily a good idea to have students returning to the classroom at this time. I recognize how being in the classroom is probably the best type of education, and that's really what we want for our kids. So I'm not one of those people who doesn't want our students to return to the classroom. I want our students to return. I'm a mom. I have a 6th grader. She is starting her first year of middle school on the computer. I completely understand the social aspects of being in school, the academic aspects of being in the school building. I understand all of that. So let me be clear. My position is not that I don't want students to go back into the building. My position is that when students go back into the building, it should be safe. Not just safe for the students, it should be safe for all parties involved. That means it should be safe for the bus driver who has to encounter the students as they get onto the bus and travel to school. It should be safe for those teachers and administrators who are going to encounter students throughout the building. It should be safe for those cafeteria staff, the school nutrition staff that are going to encounter the students throughout the day. It should be safe for all people involved. It should be safe for children, the students. And so based on this, I do not feel that the current timeline, especially that Gwinnett County is using, is what should be done at this point. I think that we need to have clear, data-driven parameters to drive the decision to bring students back into the classroom. Unfortunately, I do foresee that we will have to revisit and probably have to re-quarantine and take students back out of the classroom eventually, if things are done correctly. And I hope that things are done correctly and that we still continue to use the data as well as the guidelines for not having students in those enclosed spaces if there are cases in different schools. So I'm of the position that I want our babies in school, but we should wait.
And that almost exactly mirrors our position. We've said time and time again that as educators, there's nowhere we want to be than in the classroom with our students but it has to be safe for everybody. So one of the things that has been concerning is that when the original guidance came out, it did have some hard and fast numbers in it for when it was safe to reopen, and those numbers have gone away. So what kind of numbers should we be looking for? Because I've heard somebody say, well, we should have 14 days of decreasing cases. And I said, so, okay, so 3,000 cases today and 2,999 tomorrow, and we might be down to 2,980 after 14 days. Is that 14 days of decrease you want? And they're like, no, it fits your
Right.
definition. So what should we be looking for?
So I think we need to look at a bunch of different parameters, not just one. So one of the things I think we need to look at is percent positivity. And I think we need to get percent positivity in our community and our county as a whole below a certain threshold. Some people are saying that threshold should be 10%. Some people say it should be 6%. I would err on the side of we should have the lowest percent positivity as possible, and it needs to be sustained. It doesn't need to be, oh, we dropped below yesterday, let's stick everyone in the classroom tomorrow. A sustained lower percent positivity. Another thing that I think we really need is greater testing capacity. So lower percent positivity, the greater ability to test more people and test people more often, especially in response to an exposure. And I think we need more robust contact tracing. I'm still not 100% convinced that our contact tracing program is working very well. And I'm a little concerned that with the position of reopening schools and getting kids back into the classroom, that people are trying to hide, I guess it's the best way to say it, the numbers, because it goes against the current plan that they have. And so if you're doing that, then you don't want contact tracing. You want the opposite of contact tracing. You want, if someone gets exposed, y'all just don't show up to school, and don't tell anybody, because then if we tell someone, then we've got to quarantine and, do all these different things. So I'm a little concerned. I'm a little concerned about that. And I don't know. So I want to be clear. I'm not saying that that is what people are doing. It is just a concern that I have, that if that happens, we are going to make the problem worse. It doesn't make the problem better. And it may not even be at a school or an administrative level. It could also just be parents that say, I want the school to stay open. My kid is positive. I don't want anyone to know that when he was at school on Monday and Tuesday, he probably exposed other people. I'm just going to keep him home for a little while till his fever goes away. Or I'm going to throw some Tylenol, give him some Tylenol and send him on into the school because of the desire to just have the schools stay open. So it's a lot. You can't combat a pandemic virus without community collective buy-in on stopping the virus. If everyone in the community is not on the same page that we stop this virus, then it's not going to stop, because we need everyone to participate in this, in the larger goal.
And Dr. Clark, can you explain some of the other obstacles or challenges you see that schools might face in terms of contact tracing?
So, when it comes to contact tracing, in order for contact tracing to work, if I'm positive, I need to now explain, or I need to list, not explain, I need to list all the people I potentially came in contact with. And then those people need to either isolate or quarantine until they know for sure that they are not positive, or get tested. If they never show symptoms, they should probably still get tested anyway about 10 days later to make sure they're not an asymptomatic carrier. But there's a lot of problems with implementing that strategy with the way that we are trying to do things. Number one, contact tracing doesn't work if you only consider the kid that you sat right next to, the kid that was in front of you, the kid that was on the other side of you, and the kid that was behind you as a contact. That doesn't work. You can't ignore the fact that that kid was on the bus with a bunch of people. You can't ignore the fact that that kid during transitions was potentially in the hallway with a bunch of people. And maybe some people they don't even know. You know, it's a big school, we're all changing classes, everyone doesn't know everyone. So contact tracing is a lot harder when we are making guidelines that ask us to do the minimal amount of work to figure out who is a possible exposure. That's not how contact tracing works. And that leads to a very ineffective contact tracing program, which leads to an increase in the numbers in an area because you're not getting the whole picture. You're not really truly identifying exposures and people who need to be careful and who need to be tested, especially if they become symptomatic, but even if they remain asymptomatic.
So we have one of our people who's watching us has asked a question about that. She says, so if a student is positive and before they have symptoms, they were in the cafeteria and all the other kids are there as well, are the students and staff that were in the cafeteria at the same time, are they considered exposed?
So the way that we're doing exposure, the way that we're defining exposure is you would have had to be in contact with, in close contact with the person who is positive for at least 15 minutes. And so, for example, if the cafeteria worker, you know, basically asked them for their student number, typed it in the machine, and then the student left, technically, if that student went and sat on the other side of the cafeteria, we would not consider that an exposure. But I personally feel like that is not the way we should do actual contact tracing. And the reason why I say that is because it doesn't take 15 minutes for you to inhale someone else's respiratory droplets, especially if masks are not being worn or if masks are being worn improperly. And so I think, again, if it were up to me, we would err on the side of caution. We would not err on the side of being cavalier and being very, very specific about who is a contact. So if I was in the room with you for 13 minutes and I wasn't in the room with you for 15 minutes, technically you would say I haven't been exposed. But I'm sorry, there's not a whole lot of difference to me between 13 minutes and 15 minutes besides the 120 seconds. But I, knowing how viruses work and how respiratory droplets work, am not convinced that that difference of 2 minutes is the difference between me possibly being exposed and having contracted the virus and me not contracting the virus. It's just not how viruses work. They're not on a clock. The virus does not have a stopwatch that says, oh, it's been 15 minutes, now I can infect. That's not how it works. And so I think, we come up with all these different parameters, and I understand people want to, I understand that people want to have specific metrics to use, but I'm not 100% convinced that the 15-minute exposure, especially, for example, if a cafeteria worker is coming in contact with all of the students that was in contact with that student while that student was in the classroom. So yeah, maybe you weren't talking to that student for like 2 minutes or maybe even a minute and a half, but every other student that student was possibly exposed the virus to, you also talk to them for a minute and a half. And so you still are increasing the possibility of transmission that way.
When you said that, I know Carly has a question. We were talking about that a couple of weeks ago because we actually had a board member that suggested that the students in the classroom get up and move every 14 minutes to a new chair. Yeah, so we laughed that night and said, no, the virus doesn't have a stopwatch.
Yes, that's not how viruses work at all. And yeah, those silly things like that, while yes, they sound silly, they're actually really dangerous, because there are people out there that are really trying to figure out a way to game the system. They're trying to figure out a way to, game the virus, as if the virus is really sitting there like, okay, it's not time for me to infect yet. That's just not how transmission works.
So what about some of the counties are bringing in half of their students so that they can try to social distance. Would that be a safe way to ease into return to school?
So I do think that if you could accomplish true social distancing the entirety of the day, so I'm not just talking about in the classroom. We can't think about this in silos. We can't act like the virus will only transmit while you're sitting in class. The virus can transmit anywhere, from the moment you leave the bus stop all the way to the moment you get off of the bus returning home. Anytime you're around others, there is a potential exposure. So, for example, on the school buses, it is almost impossible to social distance. In fact, that's what the school system basically said. We don't have the ability to social distance with our current capacity of bus drivers. So, if you could find a way to truly create social distancing, mandatory masks, and properly wearing those masks, from the moment they get onto the school bus all the way to the moment they get off of the school bus, then it is possible. So, half, in my opinion, is still not enough people to be out of the building. I don't know if I'm sure y'all have been in a school recently. Even if you put 50% of the students in those schools, it is still crowded. We've got schools with trailers and things like that because we recognize that there's just not enough room inside the physical building for the number of students that are already there. If you cut that in half, that's probably about how many students should be there. And then I really think you would probably almost have to cut it down to about 25% or even 20% capacity to really be able to truly accomplish social distancing from the bus to the hallways, to the classroom, bathroom breaks, lunch, cafeteria, back onto the bus, all of these different places. So, we have to think about viral spread as not something that waits until you're in a specific place. The virus is spread by respiratory droplets. So unless people are not breathing, the virus can spread. And so that's how any place that a person is breathing, that is where the virus can be transmitted. And so that is how we have to think about it when we come up with these strategies for how to open safely.
Okay. Someone else that's watching us asked, will there be rapid testing available at some point? And what might that look like?
So I know that there is some rapid testing available. It's not available widely. Unfortunately, for some, rapid testing is also not free. Your insurance might have to pay for it, or you might have to come out of pocket a little bit for that. That's not in every place, but in some places that is the case for rapid testing. The other thing about rapid testing that people need to be aware of is it is fast, but it is not always right. There's a higher false negative rate with the rapid test. So oftentimes when you get a rapid test, they do a second confirmatory test that does take the normal amount of time. But if you are shedding virus, if you are symptomatic, usually the rapid test will confirm that you are in fact COVID positive. I would love to see more robust testing. I would love to see faster test results. There was a certain point where it was taking people almost 2 weeks to get their results back. The problem with that is by the time you got your results back, you had already potentially exposed so many people. And by the time you got the results back, you're probably no longer shedding, live virus and actually spreading it to people anymore. So now you're quarantining after you're shedding. And so it kind of defeated the purpose. So I would say, yes, we need more rapid tests. I think the testing technology is improving, and I think that we will probably see that. But I do think that people need to understand that that is probably going to come at a cost for some people, and so it may not be available to everyone. I would love for it to be. I don't have any specific numbers on that, but yes, there are rapid tests. Yes, they can be used. No, they're not always free.
Okay, we have lots of questions
Oh,
tonight.
wow.
They're asking lots of questions. So the next question is, you've said masks several times. What about the face shields? Is one safer than the other? Is one better than the other? What should we be looking for?
So the truth is, masks are the safest. If you had to have a mask or a face shield, you should have on a mask. A face shield without a mask has not been shown to be that effective in blocking the virus. And that is just because of the nature of, again, respiratory droplets. If you just think about when you breathe, the air doesn't just stay going directly in front of you. If you breathe, it expands. The face shield might block, like, it might block some, but because the face shield is not flush with your face, your respiratory droplets can get around that. They're small enough, they act like a gas, and any gas is going to fill up the container that it is in. It does not stay in one place. It's going to diffuse out. So yes, those respiratory droplets can still get around the mask. So if you're going to use a face shield, you should also use a mask to be safe.
Okay. This next question is obviously from an elementary teacher. When the kids are outside, for instance, at recess, how far away do they need to be from each other to be considered safe?
So the recommendation is 6 feet apart, and that's whether you're inside or outside. And that's whether you're masked or unmasked. Now, if you have to be closer, it is definitely recommended that both people wear a mask. So I actually recommend that even at recess, students should have their masks on. They should basically be wearing it anytime they're in public. Now, I understand that masks are very hot. And I understand that we live in Georgia, and Georgia is very hot. But the truth is, it's still safer. I have had to wear my mask outside as I did food distribution for a food drive. I've had to wear my mask outside, as I have done a number of outside events during the pandemic. And yes, it is not comfortable, but it is what we need to do in order to prevent spread. So keeping them as far apart from each other as possible. The advantage of being outside, however, is that you're, again, talking about gases and their properties of gases and how they work. Gases fill up a container. Well, if the earth is your container, that dilutes, for lack of a better way of putting it, kind of dilutes out the virus that kind of stays in that general vicinity because the air is actually moving. So I do think that kids running around on the playground, if there's a fleeting moment where they're really close to each other, I don't think you necessarily have to be worried, especially if they're masked.
The next question, we're getting lots tonight, ask about the, not the face mask, but I think it's called the gaiter that they pull over their head, around their neck, and then
Gaiter.
pull up. Is that safe?
So unfortunately, no. So, when the CDC first put out the recommendation about the cloth mask, there was not a whole lot of distinction about what type of cloth mask. And, the issue with a pandemic and how fast this virus is moving is sometimes we're basically, I've heard this analogy used a lot. We're building the plane while we fly it. And so we're learning new things every day. And what we've learned is that the fleece neck gaiters that a lot of athletes use, you know, for winter time, before this pandemic even happened, this kind of, you know, a covering for the face for athletes, we're finding that that actually spreads the virus more. So the respiratory droplets, that particular material, the respiratory droplets are actually able to exit that, and they are now more potent and able to transmit more. So that particular cloth mask is not recommended. The fleece neck gaiters are not recommended because of that. Cotton, mixed thread mask, the regular surgical masks, N95s if you have access to them, but honestly, we really need to make sure that those we need to make sure that our healthcare workers have those. Things like that. Those are the better type of masks to wear. Neck gaiters and also bandanas tied around your face have been shown to not be as effective.
Dr. Clark, in terms of reliability and validity of the test, which test do you suggest? The one that just became available, which is a saliva-based test, or the nasal swab test?
So the nasal swab test is extremely uncomfortable for a lot of people. And so the saliva test, I do think is a good alternative. I have not read any studies about the efficacy and the sensitivity of the saliva test, but just understanding that both of those tests are still PCR-based tests. And so what that means is that it is looking for viral RNA. They're RT-PCR based tests that looks for viral RNA. And so what they're looking for is virus that is in your body. This is different than the antibody test, which basically looks for your body's response to the virus having been there. That doesn't give you as much information other than to let you know, yes, you have COVID, or you had it at least sometime in the recent past. I don't have a lot of information about the saliva test, but I would definitely look that up and get that information back to anybody who has a question about that.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question to the mask. I've heard that the mask with the valve on it is not, I'm wondering about that because I have a mask with a valve on it, and I'm wondering, is that safe to wear if you don't have COVID? I've heard mixed opinions.
So the valve mask, the way the valve works, it's meant to like let air up. It's meant to be breathable. Well, in the process of doing that, it does not necessarily block the virus from getting out or in. But I will say this, for a lot of those masks, they also come with a filter on the inside, and that filter does help some. So if you have the valve mask and you also have the carbon filter on the inside, you're probably doing a little bit more than if you don't have that filter at all. But the valve mask, that is another thing that, again, building the plane while we fly it, we're learning more about which masks are more effective and which masks are less effective. And they're finding that the valve masks, which are normally used for like cycling and like, you know, they're normally dust masks. They have been shown to not be as effective at preventing transmission. So transmission means me giving it to you, transmission of the virus. And that's, I mean, just to segue before we go to the next question, that's actually what masks are for. It is to prevent you from transmitting the virus to someone else if you don't know you have it. And so a lot of people say, well, shoot, I'm healthy, I feel fine, so why should I have to wear a mask? And the point is, you can feel fine today, and then you can feel horribly sick tomorrow. If you feel sick tomorrow, you probably were contagious today, because the way disease progression works, that by the time you're showing symptoms, you already had that virus in your body, and you already had the potential to spread that virus to other people. The symptoms is your body responding to the presence of the virus. So just because you feel fine today doesn't mean you shouldn't wear a mask, because you just never know. And the point is, if everyone wears a mask, then we prevent the virus from being able to spread from host to host. And if we starve the virus of new hosts, then we can finally get in front of it and curb the spread of the virus and, help out our hospitals and prevent deaths.
Okay, I want to ask about something that I saw yesterday. And so these are being sold everywhere, and they're on all the teacher sites saying this will help you wear your mask all day and it won't get in your nose and get in your mouth. They're now selling a plastic shield to put across your mouth, across your face, under the mask.
Yeah.
Is it safe to do that?
Yeah, that's fine. That's more of just a convenience. It doesn't negate the effects of the mask at all. It's really just to, like it says, it's just to stop you from basically inhaling your mask as you talk. If I've given a speech on a microphone in a mask, and one of the things that happens is as you're talking, the mask is like going into your mouth, and you find yourself like breathing really hard and things like that. So it's just a way to stop that from happening. However, what I found is that, and this is just my own personal experience with masks that are not flush with my face, is that they create like a heat pocket where basically I'm blowing into the mask, and it's because the respiratory droplets are, staying in, and that hot heat from me breathing out, and it kind of just stays on my face. So I think those masks are actually hotter. But, I think what you should do, and what everyone should do, is find your mask that you're most comfortable with. Find a mask, practice wearing your mask, especially if you're going to have to wear a mask for an extended period of time. Have your kids practice wearing their mask. Get them a mask that they love and have them practice wearing it. Figure out what's comfortable for you. There's lots of different styles and lots of different types out there. They should be thick. You should not be able to blow out a candle with your mask on if you want it to be effective, but you can still find ones that are more comfortable for you. And I think that it's just a preference thing. Different people have different preferences. Once you find that mask, wear that, and make sure after you wear it, treat them like underwear. Don't keep wearing them over and over without washing in between. That should help with the mask wearing. So yeah, it's whatever is comfortable, but those particular plastic things they're not going to harm anything.
Yeah. So we have another question. With our current numbers, do you think that schools are it's been described as a roller coaster. You think we're going to have this in and out and in and out? You have to close for so many days. Do you think that's going to continue to happen?
I do. I do think that what we're going to see when you open too early, all you do is introduce an inconsistent pattern of students having to go back and forth between digital and in person. I do believe that in a school system as large as Gwinnett's, and just in a state as large as Georgia, it is almost impossible for us to, with the numbers where they are, it is almost impossible for every school to have in-person instruction and no one have to quarantine. And I think if we're following the protocols correctly, we're going to see a lot of students end up back at home, back on digital for a certain amount of time, and then going back to school. I think that is an issue. When I think about, we talk about the effects that quarantining and digital learning are having on our students. I think academically, it is better to be consistent than it is to just keep throwing different things. And I also think, and for the sake of our teachers, I think it's not really fair to have this constant back and forth, up and down, left and right. They need consistency too. I think a lot of people who are not teachers do not appreciate the amount of time and planning that goes into preparing for the week, preparing a lesson plan. And then to have that all uprooted and all of a sudden they're like, oh, nope, switch, everything's digital now. Okay, no, now switch, everything's in person now. Okay, now switch, now you're two people. You're digital and you're in person. I need you to be online. I need you to be in face to face right now at the same time. You are two people. And I don't care if you're only one person. You have to be two people. That takes time. And teachers who really truly care about their craft, teachers who really truly got into teaching for the right reasons, who care about their students, who care about their students learning, this is hard on them. And I completely empathize with them. I teach at the college level, and I can't even imagine having to go through all the twists and turns that we're asking our teachers to go through. It's a lot. And so this is why you asked me the question earlier about, do I think that the plan that we have right now is a good plan? And I say no. There's too many positive cases, so there's too much potential for the back and forth. And we don't need that. It would have been better if we all as a community decided, hey, look, we want our kids back in school, so we're all going to do the right thing. We're going to do it for a prolonged period of time. Labor Day is coming up, and we are going to forego the barbecues and the, communal fireworks and everything else. And we are going to buckle down and do what we need to do so that the percent positivity goes down, and it stays down, and we can actually safely bring the students in school where we can be more confident that they'll be able to actually stay in school.
Yeah. We have another teacher who has replied that they have been in school for 4 weeks and they are on an A-B schedule. So that sounds like only half A and B.
Half now, yeah.
And that she said 99% of our students are wearing their masks every day.
Right, that's amazing. Yeah.
So they don't have a lot of cases. So obviously it can be done.
Yeah, and I said that earlier. I said, if we can really, truly put all these things into place, if we can truly have social distancing once, the students are together, and if we can get everyone to wear their masks and wear them properly and wear them all the time, this can work. But the situation is that we need the situation that she's describing, or he or she is describing, is that community buy-in that I talk about. It sounds like everyone in that school is on the same page, and they have all agreed to be on the same page. I am not seeing that across Gwinnett County, and I'm just going to be really honest. There are groups of parents who absolutely positively do not want their child to wear a mask, and they are protesting against that. And I have witnessed with my own eyes groups saying things like, I am going to send my child to school in a lace mask, or I'm going to send my child to school in a cheesecloth mask, just to get past their stupid mandate. And they better not say anything to my kid, but I don't believe my child should have to wear a mask. That's not going to work. So we need that community buy-in. We need everyone to participate. So that example that was just given, that's an amazing example. It sounds like they have the ability to social distance, and they have everyone participating in the mask wearing, and hopefully they're also living in a community that is also doing, because again, it's not just in the school. That's what people have to understand. You're not just going to catch the virus. It's not like you only would catch the virus in school. If you catch the virus somewhere else, you catch it there and then you bring it to school. So you have to understand that it's not just what you're doing inside of the school, it's what your community as a whole is doing. And we're seeing across the state and across the country, communities that have mandated masks, they're seeing their cases go down. They're seeing their percent positivity go down. And finally, they're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I would love to see that for Gwinnett County, and I think it is possible, but I just think we need all parents to be on one accord that the best thing for our students is to stop the spread of the virus, not just get their kids in school, but stop the spread of the virus so that we can have our kids in school safely and feel confident that they're safe and that they will be able to stay in school and not have this inconsistent back and forth quarantine, 10 days, 14 days exposure. potentially life-threatening or life-ending exposure to a virus.
We have someone who commented about Gwinnett because we know Gwinnett went back for some students in person today.
Yes.
And this person has commented that some students came to school today with symptoms. So we already have other students and staff who have been exposed on the first day back.
And see, that is the issue. Gwinnett County school system, Gwinnett County Public Schools, basically educates 10% of all the students in our entire state. We have a huge share of the students in our state. I think I got that right, 10%. I'm pretty sure that's right. That's a lot of students. And that means we need a lot of people to participate. That means we need everyone. If your child has the sniffles, if your child has a fever, if your child has a really bad headache, if they have a cough, if they have a sore throat, I know you are really excited to get them back into school, but sending them to school, that is the opposite of what needs to be done if you really truly want them to be in school. So.
Okay. One thing, I'll go ahead and do this now. Every week on Wednesday, and I do a post on Facebook almost every day. I haven't gotten it every single day. But the numbers for the week and how many children below the age of 17, birth to 17 in Georgia, are positive. So when I started tracking this on July 1st, we had 5,026 cases in Georgia. And our number today is 22,519. And that's a 9% increase over the last week. And the other, I posted this yesterday, the other sad thing is we now have 4 confirmed deaths of children in our state. So can we anticipate that this will begin to change if we are still going forward with the current plans to be back in our buildings?
So the one thing that I have been having a lot of trouble with is that a lot of people say things, incorrect things, like children don't get it, or if they get it, they don't get it that bad. And if they do get it bad, they don't die or have to be hospitalized. And that is not true. That is absolutely not true. Children can get COVID. Children can spread COVID. They can spread COVID as efficiently as adults. Children can get very sick from COVID. They can get some of the same symptoms that adults get, and they can also get some other like inflammatory syndromes associated with exposure to COVID or contraction of COVID. Kids can suffer long-term damage from COVID, long-term heart damage, long-term lung damage from COVID. And yes, children can die from COVID. These are all things that are true. And I don't care if it's one child or if it's 1,000 children. I think when we get to a place that we're okay with these students dying to make a point, then we've gone to a very dark place. The truth is, those numbers will probably continue to rise. The children are not these like superhumans. I mean, anyone who has children knows children get sick. And they also know children spread germs. I don't know why we would all of a sudden think that with COVID, it is completely different. The population of people that are that make up the majority of the cases now are younger people. So it is starting to affect younger people, and our hospitals are still as overwhelmed and still as crowded as they were, or at least they were the last time I checked. So that means that some of those people are having to go to the hospital. CHOA, Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, and places like that. They are having to treat children, not just for COVID itself, but for these other conditions, like this multiple inflammatory syndrome due to COVID. So this is real. We're talking about our babies. And so honestly, when the first child died, it broke my heart. And when the second child died, that second child was in Gwinnett County, actually. It broke my heart. It breaks my heart to hear any time these children are losing their lives, because I just, at this point, don't think it didn't have to happen. We didn't have to be here. And so that's what really bothers me about the situation.
Yes. This tends to be the point each week that we kind of get down, because I think we're all there that it didn't have to happen, that children began to die. And like you, we've heard, well, kids don't get that sick, et cetera, et cetera. And one thing that, as a result of that, we know that there is a consideration of deeming educators as essential workers, which the problem we see with that is that if you are an essential worker, you have to go to work unless you have symptoms. So that will lead to more asymptomatic spread. Is designating more and more people essential workers, and I'm thinking not just educators, is that going to benefit us in controlling the virus?
So absolutely not. I read the article that discussed using the essential worker title as a way to get around some of the guidelines as far as who has to go to work, who has to quarantine, who doesn't have to quarantine. And it's not acceptable. Here's the deal. If there are a certain set of guidelines that we have decided are the safe way to do things, and then you realize when looking at those guidelines that if I have to do it like this, then I can't do it. If your reaction is, well, then we just can't do it, or if your reaction isn't, oh, we just can't do it, and instead your reaction is, well, just change the guidelines to what we can do, then there's really something flawed with that approach. And that's what we're doing. We're basically saying these rules are too hard to follow, so let's change the rules. And that does not prevent spread. That does not stop people from being hospitalized. That does not stop people from losing their loved ones or losing their own life. That does not keep our teachers safe. It does not keep our students safe. It does not keep our staff and our schools safe. Nothing about that plan keeps anyone safe. And it's completely flies in the face of literally everything that everyone's saying about, oh, we want to get past this virus. No, you can't do it that way. It's backwards logic. You're moving backwards doing it that way. So I am 100% against using that title to get around safety guidelines, because that is essentially what they are asking to do, to use a designation to get around particular safety guidelines when our children, our babies are involved.
Well, Dr. Clark, you have given some absolutely excellent information tonight, very helpful information. And I was wondering, what would you say to a parent who had a child with a disability who insisted that their child have face-to-face instruction? From a scientific standpoint, how would you explain to that parent the options that the parent has?
I completely understand that there are certain parents that actually really do need the services that are offered in person. I get that 100%. And the truth is, it's not an easy It's not an easy thing to try to figure these things out. And I will be honest and say at a certain point, I did feel like if anybody had to be in the building, it should have only been them, and they should have only been in larger spaces like cafeterias or gyms where they could spread out. It's hard. But I also want to recognize that a lot of times, and this is not 100% of the time, so I don't want to make it seem like it's always this way. But for some of those students, some of those children who have disabilities are also more susceptible to contracting the virus themselves. Or if they contract the virus, it will be harder on their bodies if they were to get it. So maybe not more susceptible, but once they do get it, it'll be harder for their body to fight it. And so I think we have to take all those things into consideration. And so this is where those difficult choices have to be made. I completely understand that digital does not work for everyone. I get that. My daughter didn't even like digital when we first started, this process in the spring. She was not a big fan. My daughter does not have a disability though, so I don't want to center myself in my position towards your question and towards those people who really truly do need those teachers and that face-to-face and those services that are being offered at the school. And so what I would just say is that I know our schools are doing our best, and I know our teachers were doing the best that they could to provide the education they need for our special education students and our special needs students. And I think that any reopening plan that we had, those should have been the students that came back first by themselves, alone. I think that if we were going to open the school building, we should have had them in the school building first, keep them safe. And then when numbers really are truly going down and we're really truly at a place where it's safer for others, then we bring in the other students. That would have been my vision if it was up to me. That would have been my vision, because I completely understand how those parents feel, and I completely understand. But I also understand that those parents would also be very devastated if their child contracted coronavirus. And so it is a very difficult decision to make.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to also say thank you for the information. I'm getting a lot of comments about keeping students safe, and thank you for the wonderful information you've given us tonight. I wonder, is there anything that our viewers could do to maybe help you? I know you're campaigning right now. Is there anything we could do to maybe lend a hand?
Honestly, just, spreading the word. I have a lot of people that are probably tuning in right now that either live in the Lilburn area or know someone who does. If you have a child that attends Parkview cluster and parts of Brookwood cluster, and also a little bit of Meadow Creek cluster, specifically the Lilburn Elementary and Lilburn Middle area, then you may live in my district, or you may know someone who does. And, because of COVID, which we talked about all night, canvassing and, knocking on doors is different. I practice what I preach. And the same way I don't feel that it is safe to go in the school building, I also don't feel it is safe for me to go from door to door, knocking on doors. It's not that I don't want to speak to voters, because I would love to speak to every single person that I could, but I do not feel that it is safe, because you just don't know what's behind every single door. And so you don't know what you're carrying from one place to the other. And I also would not want to potentially put my volunteers in harm's way as well. And so if you get a phone call from me, pick up the phone. We're calling instead of knocking on doors. But if not that, just spread the word and let people know that there's a scientist that is running in this area, and that I am trying my best to put science and data and evidence into practice and policy making in Georgia.
And thank you for that.
Thank you very much. One of the things we do every week is we have to have some commercials.
Okay.
And so tonight we want to let everyone watching know we will not have Facebook Live next Wednesday night, September 2nd. And that is because we are going to have next Thursday, September 3rd, we are going to have our first Rights at Night webinar. And we did a webinar in the end of July that was all our members could join about their rights, about reopening schools and about going back into the building. So next Thursday, September 3rd, we have 3 topics that we will be answering your questions. And if you are a member, you should have gotten the email today from GAE, Professional Teaching and Learning. And it's got Rights at Night in the middle section of that email that you can register for this session next Thursday at 6:30. We're going to be talking about free speech and social media and what we as educators, our rights and our concerns and what we need to do to keep ourselves safe from those avenues. And then privacy and virtual instruction, because we all know we've been hearing those stories about things happening when teachers are doing their lessons virtually and using Zoom and Google Meets and Teams. And so we want to provide our members with that information. So that's our commercial for this evening. We will not be here next Wednesday for Facebook Live, but if you are a member, please check your email from earlier today. If you did not receive that email, we need you to go on to mynea360.org and update your information so we can make sure that you will forward that email to you, and also so you get your information in the future. So that's the end of my commercial for this evening. And Dr. Clark, we are so thrilled that you were with us tonight. So much great information. And as we go forward, we hope you will keep us informed and stay in touch with us, because this truly is something that we are all in it together. So
Yes,
the last,
is it? Oh, sorry. I was going to say, is it okay if I give my website if people want to just learn more about me, or is that?
Oh, go right ahead. We would love for you to do that.
All right. Really quickly, again, thank you all for having me on this evening. I really do appreciate this opportunity to have this very important conversation. If you want to learn more about me and my campaign and what I am about and what I'm trying to do in our area, you can visit Jasmine, like the flower, the number 4, GA.com. That's JASMINE, the number 4, GA.com.
Great. Thank you. And we want to thank everyone who joined us this week. And we will be back in 2 weeks. And we will, at that point, Labor Day will be over, and we know a lot more of our students will be back in the building, and we'll be talking about this. And we'll also be talking about, we are closing in on Election Day on November 4th. So my final commercial message for this evening, if you are not registered to vote, we want you to get registered to vote tonight. And then we want you to get ready, and we want you to vote by mail or early vote, so we don't have long lines making it dangerous when it is time for us to vote, because we need all educators to vote in this election. We do not need a Secretary of Education who wants to give public funds to private schools. We need a Secretary of Education that is going to support our public schools. So thank you all for being with us tonight. We'll see you in 2 weeks. And if you are a GAE member, please sign up for the Rights at Night session that will be held next Thursday. And if you did not receive that email today, send us a message here on the GAE President's page, and we will make sure that we get that out to you ASAP. Thank you all.